So in this next video, I want to show you how you can add some text and we can change some of the properties of the text and add some style to it. So the main tool we will use for this is the text tool over here. You probably want to have a little look before you start at what your default kind of fonts and things are that you're going to be using. I'm after a sort of kind of thickish sort of font to get a bit of the effect of the similar text that's used perhaps in Fortnite or something. You may need to change the color of it. I think default might be black, but I'm going to sort of have a white color for my text. And then you need to sort of change the size of the font. Typically for this, the default's really quite small, but 200 is what I'm going to use for this. So now we've selected those things there, we can click somewhere on the image where we'd like the text to appear. We can start to type the text that we want. This case, it was a birthday card that I'm doing for somebody. Here, and I'll just sort of add in some enter, kind of put it onto new extra lines. I'm going to use the move tool to kind of position the text where I want it to be. I can actually rotate the text and things I want. And actually, I've chosen a font there which really doesn't work. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back into that kind of layer, I'm going to double click, and I'm going to select all of the text that's in there so that quite a nice effect actually, but I'm going to say that I want to change the font. That's not kind of what I was after, well, not what I had in mind. Kind of have a little look at sort of trying a font like that. Still not really what I was after. I'm after a sort of thick font, but a sort of plainish sort of thick font. Something maybe like that. No, it's still not quite what I'm after. A little bit thicker. There's a whole series of different fonts and things that you can kind of have in here. You know what? I'm going to settle with that one for now, and that will do. So click away to another layer or something. We'll see what we've got. It's actually kind of maybe a bit of a creepy sort of more of an effect than what I'm after. But here we go. Last thing I think actually now I've changed the font itself. Finding is it's probably small font, so I'm going to just make that a bit bigger again. I'm going to go. You can type in the numbers, but if you go over the word size, you can sort of adjust it just by dragging and dropping there, and that'll do, I think. Okay, if we want to add some extra style and things onto this, what we can do is we can choose that layer, and if I go off not to where the text itself is, if I go off to the side, if I double click on that, it's going to bring up something called the layer style sort of box here, and this works on all the different layers, but in particular you've got some options that if you've got some text in there that you can change things about that text. So common effects and things with text are maybe things like a drop shadow, so you can see there it gives it some depth and sort of make that text stand out by putting a shadow in it, and you can adjust sort of the color and how big the shadow is going to be and things. But actually all I'm after doing here is I'm going to put something onto it, what's called a stroke. And the idea of a stroke is when we think of shapes inside of images, they have two things. One of them is they have a stroke, which is the outside of that shape, and then we have a fill that is the inside of that shape. So we're simply saying that we want to see the stroke here, we want to change the properties of it. And what I've done is when you click on where it says stroke, you'll get to see the things you can change. So for example, you could change the size of it, perhaps something like that you're after, a sort of really big, thick, kind of standout one, or maybe not, maybe a bit smaller, like I'm doing there. You can obviously change the colour of that as well to be sort of different colours and things depending on what you feel is right for what you're trying to do. But I think I'm just going to stick with there. Okay, so maybe you can have a play around with all of those. There's different, as I say, drop shadows and embossing and glowing and a whole host of different things. We can have patterns and things inside of our text as well. But I'll leave that for you to play with. Try and experiment with that. So we click on OK. So in this short video, what I've done is I've shown you how to add some text, how to sort of change the basic properties such as the font style and the font size. I've shown you a little bit of formatting, sort of how I added some pressed enter on them to make the sort of text appear. new lines, and then we looked at using layer styles. So we double clicked on the layer styles here to go in our case I've added a stroke to the text to get an outside sort of element to make the text sort of just stand out a little bit more. Okay,